Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you're very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. And I do hope that March 2022 has treated you all very well so far. And as it's now the first Friday of that month, we are going to be once again taking a look through the history news headlines from last month, so from February. As always, I'll be using the description box as a place to link the history news articles we're looking at today, in addition to any other relevant materials that I happen to find. In this video, we have some updates, some new news, and also a new segment that I'm going to be trialling at the end of this video. In that segment, I'm going to be talking about upcoming and recently opened events and exhibitions. I'd love it if you'd let me know what you think of this addition to our monthly news updates. Also, if you want to refresh your memory on any of the previous History News Roundup videos, then you can check out the linked playlists. I've divided them by year, and so far we have a playlist for 2021 and a playlist for the very start of 2022. Right. I think that's the preamble done, and we have got a lot to cover in this month's video, so let's jump right in. Updates first. So last year there were a number of reports about various repatriations of Benin bronzes that I covered on this channel. But two of those bronzes were back in the news last month, and they were the cockerel sculpture that was formerly held by Jesus College, Cambridge, and the head of an ober or king that was once in the collection of the University of Aberdeen. As part of the repatriation process, both of these sculptures were handed over to the Nigerian High Commission in October of 2021. And as I've mentioned before, a new space, namely the Edo Museum of West African Art, is expected to be the place that will house and display many of the bronzes that have already been repatriated, alongside those that have been promised and some that we hope will be repatriated in the future. Of course, the British Museum is still being pointed to in the press coverage of some of these repatriations. For example, The Guardian points out that, quote, about 90% of Africa's cultural heritage is believed to be in Europe, French art historians estimate. Musée de Quevilly, Jacques Chirac in Paris alone holds about 70,000 African objects, and London's British Museum tens of thousands more. But back to the two artefacts we're focusing on here, because they have been ceremonially welcomed back to a traditional palace in Nigeria. And this act, I'm assuming, should go some way towards alleviating the current Ober's concerns and indeed complaints about these returned artefacts going to a new museum rather than being housed in a royal residence. So perhaps we are seeing that both palaces and the new museum, when it does open, will be able to hold and display the works, thus reducing any potential tensions. Well, I know that I, for one, and I'm sure many of us, will be watching on with interest. At the start of the year, in my review of the history news from December 2021, I discussed the discovery of an ancient mummy that was found in the fetal position, bound with ropes, and with their hands covering their face. Now, this find was made at the pre-Incan Calle Marquilla complex east of Lima in Peru. The update on this is that this mummy wasn't interred alone. A further 20 sets of remains, 12 adults and 8 children, have reportedly been found there as well. It seems that they were all sacrificed. Some were then mummified, while others were allowed to skeletonize. The bodies were wrapped in various layers of textiles, and it is thought likely that their sacrifice was performed so that they could accompany the main mummy into the afterlife. The reports also indicate that there may be much more to this ancient site, and apparently only 1% of it has been excavated so far. As always, if and when further updates appear, I will be sure to let you know. Now on to the new news. The first headline keeps us in Peru. Last month saw the publication of an article that detailed some finds made during an archaeological excavation of mortuary sites in the Chincha Valley of Peru in 2013. The lead author on this study is Dr. Jacob Bongers from the University of East Anglia, who, alongside his team, have discovered nearly 200 sets of human vertebrae threaded onto reed posts. The remains arranged in this way were determined to have belonged to both adults and juveniles. The team focused their attention on 3 reed posts with vertebrae upon them, and they submitted them for closer analysis, including radiocarbon dating. It is thought that the individuals who these remains belong to died between 1520 and 1550, while the reeds that their vertebrae were then threaded onto were harvested later, between 1550 and 1590. One explanation for the way these vertebrae were arranged is that the human remains were first disturbed in the 16th century by Europeans who arrived and robbed the burials for their grave goods. Dr. Bongers explains that, quote, "The idea is that when the Europeans were looting, they have to go through textile bundles that have these bodies. And so they're ripping textile bundles and taking out the gold and silver, and bodies are coming apart. Then local peoples, Chincha peoples, are coming back, seeing this and trying to put their dead back together." Professor Bill Sillar from University College London recognised the plausibility of this being the chain of events that led to the remains, the vertebrae, being arranged in the way that they were found by the team in 2013. But he also points to the tradition within many Andean communities of revisiting and interacting with their dead. He is quoted as saying, "While I think it is quite reasonable to think the vertebrae were restrung and mummies reconstructed as a response to colonial interventions, I could also see it as equally plausible that this practice emerged as an aspect of Andean mortuary ritual before the Spanish intervened. Presumably then, it would be necessary to submit other sets of remains from the dig to similar studies, or at least the reed posts that the vertebrae were threaded onto, if we hope for a more conclusive answer to be found. So, if all the reed posts date from after 1550, I'd say that it was potentially a fair conclusion that these remains were rearranged in this way in response to European presence and also activity in the area. Now, if further investigation takes place, I will of course update you all. In June 2020 in Bristol, the statue of the slave trader Edward Colston was dragged from its plinth and thrown into the harbour. In January 2022, 4 people were cleared by a jury for their part in pulling that statue down, after their defence argued that the monument was so indecent and potentially abusive that its presence constituted a crime. Now, following a consultation with people from across Bristol, the independent We Are Bristol History Commission is recommending that the statue should be displayed in a city museum in its current state, so it should be shown horizontally and still daubed with paint. As for the plinth on which it once stood, they recommend that it should be used for temporary pieces and activities, and that it should be left empty at certain points to act as a reminder of the toppling of the statue. We will have to wait and see which, if any, of this Commission's recommendations will be taken on and put into action. The sunken remains of Captain Cook's ship, the Endeavour, have finally been located. Maybe. So during its lifetime, this ship had a few names and it went on a number of adventures. On one of its voyages, Captain James Cook sailed it around the South Pacific searching for what was known as the Great Southern Land. So he was charting the coast of New Zealand and then Australia's eastern coastline before claiming that land for Great Britain on the 22nd of August 1770. Just 8 years later, so in 1778, the ship was sunk by British forces during the American War of Independence. Now, it seems, her possible rediscovery is causing an international incident all of its own. Kevin Sumption, Chief Executive of the Australian National Maritime Museum, announced that a shipwreck found in the waters off Rhode Island in the US was, quote, the final resting place of one of the most important and contentious vessels in Australia's maritime history. Now, this Australian institution has, or maybe that should be had, a partner organisation based in the US, namely the Rhode Island Marine Archaeology Project, or RIMAP. And they responded to this announcement by calling it a breach of contract and, quote, premature, saying that it was caused by, quote, Australian emotions or politics. So, that's awkward. And to make matters worse, it looks like neither side is going to be backing down or giving ground. And thus, a 22-year partnership looks like it's on the verge of dissolving acrimoniously. The Australian National Maritime Museum appear to be continuing to wholly back their announcement, while those in Rhode Island, including the head of the project, Dr. Kathy Abbas, remain publicly unwilling to confirm it. Indeed, Abbas was quoted as saying, "There are many unanswered questions that could overturn such an identification. When the study is done, RIMAP will post the legitimate report on its website. RIMAP recognises the connection between Australian citizens of British descent and the Endeavour, but RIMAP's conclusions will be driven by proper scientific process and not Australian emotions or politics." Sumption's team in Australia fired back with the following, quote, "She is entitled to her own opinion regarding the vast amount of evidence that we have accumulated. As stated today, our director, Kevin Sumption, is confident that the preponderance of evidence identifies shipwreck site RI 2394 in Newport Harbour as the last resting place of Endeavour. There must now be at least some concern that all of this back and forth will sour relationships and thus possibly affect the speed, even accuracy, whether that's perceived or otherwise, of any conclusion that is ultimately reached." A letter containing 6 lines of Mary Queen of Scots' own handwriting has been bought at auction. The letter in question is dated to the 26th of June 1568, which places it 2 months after Mary's escape from Lochleven Castle. And at the time of writing this letter, Mary was being held at Carlisle Castle. The letter asks that the French ambassador help to secure the safe passage of George Douglas to France. Douglas was a Scottish nobleman who had helped Mary to escape from Lochleven. It's thought that Mary had hoped that Douglas would be able to plead her case to the French king, and that monarch might be willing to liberate her from her new captors in England. The letter was auctioned by Lyon and Turnbull with an asking price of £14,000, and in January it was reported that it was thought that the letter might fetch as much as £18,000. In the end, however, it achieved far more. It ended up selling for £32,500. The new owner, or indeed owners, are for now at least unknown, but whoever they are, I do hope that they might be willing to allow this important artefact to go on public display in the near future. We're staying at Carlisle Castle for the next headline too, but rather than looking at a letter that was written and sent from there, this story deals with messages that were carved into that castle's walls. Around 300 carvings dating from the 15th century are the subject of a restoration project that's intended to save them from the elements and allow them to be seen more clearly than they have been for generations. The location of the carvings, in a tiny room between two cells, has led to the supposition that they were made by prison guards who were looking to fill their time. Some of the carvings are the emblems of local powerful families, like the Percys and the Dacres, but there's also a deer hunting scene, an image of a knight in profile, George and the Dragon is represented, and there is a satirical image of a fox preaching to some chickens, which is believed to be a warning about trusting the powerful. That is also likely to be a mocking commentary on the clergy of the day. I haven't been able to find out when this conservation work is expected to be completed, but when I do, I will be sure to provide you with the update. A 5,000-year-old chalk sculpture of a drum, which was uncovered in the Yorkshire countryside near a village called Burton Agnes, is being referred to as the most important piece of prehistoric art to be found in Britain in the last 100 years by the British Museum. And the British Museum is also the institution that is currently displaying this artefact. The sculpture is similar to 3 other drums that were discovered in 1889, 15 miles from Burton Agnes in Folkestone, North Yorkshire. The Burton Agnes drum was buried alongside the bodies of 3 children, and some bones from these remains have been carbon dated. This has allowed experts to date all of the drums to between 3005 and 2890 BCE, which, as Liam James, writing for The Independent, points out, means that they, quote, were made at the same time as the first construction phase of Stonehenge. This suggests that at the same time as the monument's columns were being moved from West Wales to Salisbury Plain, communities across Britain and Ireland were also sharing artistic styles and likely beliefs over long distances. The British Museum is displaying the drum as part of their World of Stonehenge exhibition. Neil Wilkin is the curator, and he is quoted as saying that the drum reflects the connections between communities in Yorkshire, Stonehenge, Orkney, and Ireland. I'll be giving you the details of this exhibition as part of my new segment at the end of this video, and if I can figure out how to do the timestamp thing, then I'll be sure to do that too. A study published last month in the Nature Ecology journal may rewrite our understanding of the Black Death. Until now, there has been near consensus that this terrifying plague spread throughout West Asia, North Africa, and Europe in the mid-1300s. It has been estimated that it killed up to half of the population of Europe. It's also often given some of the credit for the social, political, religious, and even cultural changes that followed in its wake. According to reports, the research team behind this study assessed pollen samples from 261 sites in 19 modern-day European countries in order to determine how landscapes and agricultural activity changed between 1250 and 1450 CE, so that's roughly a century either side of the Black Death. The team did this to determine whether agricultural practices show any signs of alteration, or indeed if there was evidence that wild plants regrew in spaces due to there being a lack of human interference. We're told that the team, quote, found evidence for sharp agricultural declines in Scandinavia, France, southwestern Germany, Greece, and central Italy, which supports the high mortality rates attested to in medieval sources. However, many regions, including much of Central and Eastern Europe and parts of Western Europe, including Ireland and Iberia, showed signs of continuity or uninterrupted growth. In parts of Poland, the Baltic countries, and central Spain, the study found that labour-intensive cultivation increased in this period as colonisation and agricultural expansion continued uninterrupted. Thus, it appears that the effects of the disease were not experienced in the same way across the continent as had been previously thought. Alessia Massi, co-author of the study, says the following in response to why some locations and people seem to have escaped virtually unscathed. The significant variability in mortality that our BDP, Big Data Paleoecology, approach identifies remains to be explained. But local cultural, demographic, economic, environmental, and societal contexts would have influenced Yersinia pestis prevalence, morbidity, and mortality. With regards to the question as to why historians may have been misrepresenting, maybe misunderstanding the spread of the severity of this illness, it's now being suggested that we look to there being a lack of primary sources, beyond those that were created by the state and church officials who commonly resided in urban areas where populations tended to be dense and sanitation poor. It's thought that this may be the thing that has been skewing our perceptions. Of course, that is perhaps only until now. Archaeologists working on the site of the ancient city of Athribis have located over 18,000 ostraca. These are inscribed pottery shards that essentially served as a cheaper alternative to papyrus, which makes them ideal for use as a kind of notepad. Most of the uncovered ostraca contain writing, but some do contain pictures of shapes, animals, humans, and even deities. A number of the fragments have been connected to an ancient school, and as Jane Recker writes for Smithsonian magazine, quote, over 100 feature repetitive inscriptions on both the front and back, leading the team to speculate that students who misbehaved were forced to write out lines. A schoolroom punishment still used and satirised in popular culture today. Also represented were notes relating to the administration of day-to-day life, including sums, lists, and receipts. The Egyptologist Christian Leitz explains the significance of the find by saying, we will be able to make a case study of daily life in late Ptolemaic/early Roman times, once we have analysed all the text, or at least a larger part of it, which will take years. I certainly look forward to seeing the result of such a study, however long it may take. The next headlines were all sent to me by lovely people on Twitter. Sarah Kane, who goes by @grownupgeekgirl on Twitter, sent this my way, so thank you very much, Sarah. This article relates to the still mysterious find of a prehistoric triple burial at Dolní Věstonice, which is situated in the eastern part of the Czech Republic today. According to the report, this burial is dated to 25,000 years ago. It's thought that a female lies buried between two males. She has a curvature of the spine. The male on her left has been positioned on his back, his face turned towards the female, with his hands on her pelvic region, which was covered in red ochre. The male on the right lays on his front, with his face turned away, but with his arm interlinked with hers. Both males had necklaces of pierced canine teeth and ivory on their heads. The male on the left wore some kind of painted mask. He also had a thick wooden pole thrust up through his coccyx and hip. All three had red ochre applied to their heads. As for what all this might mean, well, there have been some suggestions put forward. One is that the female in the middle might have died during childbirth. And according to this scenario, the male on her left would have been a medicine man, and perhaps that explains the mask that he appears to have been wearing. The other male is thought, therefore, to have potentially been her husband. And perhaps the triple burial is because these men were held responsible for her death and thus followed her into the afterlife. An alternative reading is that what we have here might be the burial of a queen and her two consorts. Another alternative is that some have queried whether the middle figure is in fact a female. If not, then perhaps what we have here is the central male having been in a homosexual relationship with the male on the right, and that the male on the left may, for one reason or another, have decided to humiliate the individual in the middle, causing him to commit suicide, and that, as a result, the male on the right then commits suicide out of grief. Finally, the male on the left is executed by his community for what he had done to the other two. As it stands, no firm conclusion has been reached, and so the motivation that might have driven a community to choose to bury people in this way remains a compelling mystery. I wonder, what do you think is going on here? The next news item was sent to me by somebody who wishes to remain anonymous, but of course you know who you are, and so to you I say thank you. The final piece of a stolen 17th century tapestry has been found by Spanish police 42 years after it first went missing. In the early hours of the 7th of November 1980, 6 tapestries that had been made in Bruges by Cornel Schutz were stolen from the church of Santo Domingo in the town of Castrojeriz in northern Spain. The thief was known as Eric the Belgian, and he has since passed away. Interpol led an investigation in Spain, France and Belgium, which led to the recovery of all 6 tapestries, but one of them remained incomplete. A lower left-hand section of the apotheosis of the arts that depicts a cherub was missing until now. Based upon the report that I have seen, it looks like the person that we should be thanking for disclosing the location of this missing piece is the former lawyer of that now deceased art thief who was known as Eric the Belgian. Equally, I think it's worth mentioning that the archdiocese that is responsible for the church and the tapestries will now, presumably, have quite the curatorial or restoration bill on their hands if they intend to make this tapestry properly whole once again. Hopefully, we will get to see it in all its glory, if and or when that is achieved, though. Hello to Maria Caroscia, who gets an extra big thank you for sending the next 3 headlines my way. Number 1, an approximately 9,000-year-old shrine has been found in Jordan's eastern desert. Also found at the remote location was a Neolithic campsite that was, in turn, near to a set of structures that are known as desert kites, which are thought to have been used to trap wild gazelles for slaughter. Omar Akor, writing for AP News, explains that, quote, within the shrine were 2 carved standing stones bearing anthropomorphic figures, one accompanied by a representation of the desert kite, as well as an altar, hearth, marine shells, and a miniature model of the gazelle trap. According to the team behind the archaeological investigation of this area, the proximity of the site to the traps suggests the inhabitants were specialised hunters, and that the traps were the centre of their cultural, economic and even symbolic life in this marginal zone. Story number 2 from Maria is the report on the discovery of a well-preserved 1800-year-old Roman mosaic that was found in the heart of London. Archaeologists from the Museum of London Archaeology, or MOLA, made the find during an excavation, which occurred prior to the beginning of planned building work on the site, and that site is near to both the Shard and London Bridge. The find represents the largest area of Roman mosaic to be found in London in at least 50 years. It is thought that the mosaic once adorned the floor of a dining room that was part of a mansio, which the team from Mola describe as an upmarket motel offering accommodation, stabling, and dining facilities. It was a place where high-ranking officers and their guests would have stayed. Apparently, the likelihood is that this mosaic will go on public display eventually, but first the team must complete the excavation on the rest of the site where the building work is planned. So, here's hoping that they're going to find even more interesting artefacts in that location as well. And the third article we have to thank Maria for is this one. Manhattan DA returns artefacts worth $20 million to Greece. The looted and trafficked artefacts were seized from Michael Steinhardt, a billionaire hedge fund founder who was also apparently a massive hoarder of other nations' stolen heritage treasures. According to reports, a deal was struck for Steinhardt to surrender $70 million worth of illegally acquired artefacts so that he could avoid criminal charges. However, he is now banned for life from acquiring any antiquities. AP News reports that, quote, a total of 55 artefacts worth a collective $20 million are being repatriated to Greece, prosecutors said. 47 of them from Steinhardt's collection, and 8 from another ongoing investigation. The pieces will all be flown to Greece, where they will be handed over to different regional museums, depending on where they were looted from, and that is according to a spokesperson for the district attorney. So it looks like these pieces will, thankfully, soon be back in their rightful locations and thus once again available for the public to enjoy. The last news item I want us to look at will lead us seamlessly into our new final segment, the one on events and exhibitions, because this news item recounts the host of exciting finds that have been made during recent excavations in the moat at the Tower of London. And those finds are reported to include a World War I training round, an historical French coin, a French jeton or counter that comes from the 15th century, a late medieval or maybe Tudor buckle that may have come from a dagger belt, and a 17th century halfpenny trade token, which it is thought could have been made at the Tower's very own Royal Mint. Now, this extensive dig is taking place during a period of transformation within the moat, because the moat is preparing to host the first event that we are about to look at in our new final segment for these monthly videos. So now let's talk events and exhibitions. Superbloom will see the moat of the Tower of London transform into a field of flowers to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of Her Majesty the Queen. For extra fun, visitors can reach this flower meadow in the moat by taking a mat and using the Superbloom slide to make their way down. We are informed that another, less slidey route is also available. Superbloom runs from the 1st of June to the 18th of September 2022, and tickets are on sale now. For those of us who have been following the story of the repatriation of the Benin bronzes who are from Benin itself, or indeed for those who have plans to visit Benin in the next few months, this one's for you. Because you can check out Benin, Art of Yesterday and Today, from Restitution to Revelation, which opened on the 20th of February 2022 and is intended to close on the 22nd of May 2022. I'd really like to hear what people think of exhibitions like this one, and by that I mean exhibitions that aren't taking place in the UK. Because if this segment proves popular, I do want to include lots of different exhibitions and events, not just ones that I can go to in the UK. And frankly, it's highly unlikely as the world stands and also having a small child, that I'm going to get to make it out to many of these international exhibitions. But that doesn't mean that I'm not super keen to know what they were actually like. So, if you do find an exhibition overseas or go to one that I've mentioned, please let me know what you thought of it in the comments section. This next exhibition is one that I will most definitely be going to, though. It's called Becoming Anne: Connections, Culture and Court, and it's opening on the day that this video is planning to go live, so the 4th of March 2022. And it's being hosted at Anne Boleyn's childhood home of Hever Castle. The exhibition is set to run until the 6th of November 2022, and entry to the exhibition is included as part of the admission price for the castle as a whole. Perhaps you are keen to see the chalk sculpture of the drum that we looked at earlier in this video, and if so, then you will be needing to make a trip to the World of Stonehenge exhibition at the British Museum. That exhibition opened on the 17th of February 2022 and is set to run until the 17th of July 2022. Exhibition tickets are available online and advance booking is strongly recommended. If you enjoy me talking and you would like more, but this time live and in person right in front of you, then check out the link that I will be leaving in the description box to an event that I'm going to be speaking at on the 17th of March 2022. On that evening, I'll be aboard the fabulous Golden Hind, and I will be looking at early modern maritime exploration. In particular, I'll be looking at the propaganda that supported it. In addition to me chatting away, there will also be lots of other fun and informative activities going on board ship that evening as well. Next up is something for my American friends, or at least those of you who have plans or reason to be in New York, because you lucky people have two, count them, two absolutely fabulous looking Tudor exhibitions that are going to be coming your way. So one is on currently, and that's Holbein Capturing Character, and that is showing at the Morgan Library and Museum until the 15th of May 2022. But you also have another exhibition that's going to be opening later in the year on the 10th of October 2022, and that's The Tudors: Art and Majesty in Renaissance England, which will be at the Met Fifth Avenue until the 8th of January 2023. So, as I mentioned previously, it's going to be difficult, read impossible, probably, for me to make it out to either of these Tudor exhibitions. And as I'm sure many of you know, the Tudors are my wheelhouse. They are definitely my bag, baby. And my analytics tell me that lots of you watching are based in the US. If that based in the US also happens to mean that you're heading to New York and planning to go and see these exhibitions, then I really mean it. I want to know what you think of them. Please do let me know. In particular, I want to know what you think of the books that I am assuming will be accompanying these exhibitions. I am a little bit of a collector of exhibition books. So I've got the Shakespeare Stage in the World here one, Elizabeth and Mary, Elizabeth and Her People. If I go to an exhibition and I like it, I will definitely buy the glossy, shiny book. Now, I can't make it to these ones, as I've said, but if the books look good, then I probably will do my level best to try and get my grubby little mitts on them so that I can add them to my hoard. So do let me know. So what do you think of any or all of the headlines we've looked at today? Were there any headlines that caught your eye in February that I didn't discuss in this video? Also, do let me know what you think of adding this new section on exhibitions and events to the end of the video. As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comments section underneath this video, or you can find me on social media. I'll leave links to the other places you can find me on the internet in my description box, so follow me over on some or all of them so we can continue this conversation and start some others. I do hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, why not share it with some of your friends? Please also let me know you liked it by hitting the thumbs up, and please subscribe to the channel. And I know I say this almost every week, but if you do think you are subscribed, now is a good time to have a check, because YouTube is unsubscribing people and I don't know why. So do make sure that it's not you. While you're there, checking, subscribing, potentially resubscribing, why don't you also hit the bell icon that sits beside the subscribe button and then select all in the drop down menu, and that should mean that YouTube will tell you when I've next uploaded. I do hope you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye for now.